KSU since 2015. I think.
Okay, so you got 2 years to go?
Yeah. Well, it kind of depends on how fast my part-time classes go. Like this semester, I'm only doing one class a day, one class a semester. So,
Gotcha.
Pretty slow. But I do the summer classes too.
Yeah, I'm doing summer this year. I'm doing 4 classes right now. It's brutal, but I've been going to school for like 9 years. I started college early, technically, even though ironically it's because I was doing bad in high school. I got pulled out, did some homeschooling, did college when I was 17, switched majors a million times, and here I am.
You got to Georgia State though, that's pretty good.
I don't know how. My GPA is terrible.
Yeah,
It's still
picky.
terrible. I don't know. My girlfriend got into UGA. There was no way I could have gotten into UGA. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah. All right. So as you know, I'm Mitt, and
I'm Miles.
we both go to school here at KSU, right? You did journalism. I'm having him edit part of my papers. Well, all of my papers really. So tell me what do you think needed to be worked on the paper so far?
I think paper's good. I mean, the only thing I'm thinking is like expanding it out, because the story is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. I think honestly the biggest thing I was thinking is that if we expand it and like get some attention to it, you could get a lot of people's attention with it.
You mean expand it like as in networking?
Oh no, like
the actual
the writing itself. Like I think we could take it from 35 pages and like make it around 100. Just because some of it is like very fast.
Yeah.
But since the story is like so compelling, I think a lot of people would be interested in reading it. Like I was telling my roommate about it after I read it, because it like stuck with me a little bit. I was reading it at work, and I was telling my roommate about it, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's so crazy." And we're talking about it, he's like, "You should get that published." And I was like, "I think we could." I think the story is crazy enough that you could make an impact and get it published for sure. Because, I mean, I remember my ex-girlfriend was reading this book called Room. That's like a similar kind of situation that like won awards and got a lot of attention. And it reminded me of that. To me, your story's crazier than that one.
It got an Academy Award-winning movie made out of it.
It got a movie made out of it.
Was it a real, real life?
It's a story. I think it's about a mother and her child. I never actually read it, but I've heard about it.
I saw the movie.
And she was locked in a room for some time.
Yeah, part of the reason I'm really interested in making the book is I know there's more people out there like myself who are or have been through a similar situation. I actually just heard from my mom today that there on the news 17 kids were found in a similar situation. The oldest one was 29 years old.
I saw that.
Yeah, and some of them didn't even know what policemen were. And so,
they were chained to their beds.
Yeah, it is. And, it is something that kind of needs to be made more aware than what we have going on right now in the news.
That was the thing that hit home for me, because I grew up around here in Paulding County.
Oh, yeah?
Specifically. And I was like, wow, you were living right next to me. Like, your family was right next to where I lived and grew up. And I was like, I would have never thought. Like, to me, those kind of stories are almost fantasy-like or exotic. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't happen over here. I listen to stuff like that. It happened, like, right nearby.
I think that was the first time Paulding actually made national news.
Probably.
So, yeah. I mean, my story is out. Like, it's been across
the news story's out, but your story's not.
Right, my story hasn't been made published yet.
Which is the compelling part, in my opinion. Because, you already know this, but the news story is very different.
Oh, yeah.
A first-hand account is really powerful, especially since you're, like, on your own 2 feet, you're going to school. Like, I would have expected, like, if I were in that situation, to be put in a mental institute. Like, that's what I think would happen. That's impressive that you made it out. You're like doing okay. You're
You,
just a dude.
you saw that part in the story, right, where I talked about how I was almost forced into a mental institute, but people saw that I had come out better than what people would normally expect.
That's crazy because I've read about other people with extreme situations, maybe not similar to it, but maybe there are parallels, and typically they're put in the mental institute. Like they go crazy, and you made it out like alive.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
My biggest, like the other thing that I think we could expand on in the story is leading up to it. Like once you're like in the room and in the bathroom, like everything's pretty clear cut. But leading up to that, I couldn't get a feel for how life was for you growing up. Like from like your earliest memories up until that point, was it relatively normal? Was it bad but not as extreme?
I tried to interweave that throughout the story to give like a little background as we go along. I wasn't sure like how well that was coming through because I actually tried writing the book years ago, and I couldn't find a good start. So I figured, hey, if I start right before everything happens, you know, I'll have people you don't know the story at all, who just found the book maybe that ever got published, and people find it. They'll be like, wow, they'll be, you know, hooked in the beginning, and then as they read along, they'll catch on to what led to all that.
I think starting off, in terms of getting people's attention, just a good synopsis of the news story is enough to get attention. Because once I read the news article and like just pulled it up, I was like really curious, and I just read through the whole thing in one sitting. So I think a lot of people would have a similar effect. And my roommate was like, "Wow, I kind of like want to read that. I haven't given it to him." But
yeah, I have gotten a lot of people who are already interested.
Yeah, how many people have offered to help?
A lot of people offer to help, but I can't have everybody reading it all at once because
Obviously,
I can't get the book out and spread it around. The other person that's helping is he's my best friend's godfather. He used to be a journalist way back in the day. He's actually a district attorney now, and he's editing it. The first thing that he notices that some of the sentences were choppy. He wanted more flow, like some short, some long.
Yeah.
And I mean, I tried.
No, I could tell, like, from reading it that you had a lot to say and a lot to spill out. So I feel like it's a good draft in terms of, like, getting all of it out there. That's the vibe I got, was that you just had a lot to talk about. It's hard to expand on every little thought as you're going when you're writing up something like that.
And expanding on some situations, like, I spent a year in the bedroom, and I couldn't cover everything in that year because I couldn't think of everything I did, because a lot of it was just repetitive. I just did the same thing every single day. And so if I did that, that'd be really boring.
Right. You wouldn't want to like bullet point every day.
Yeah.
But we could expand on like how it was affecting you as time went on. Like, you know, because I'm just thinking, if putting myself in a situation, I'm put in a room. The other thing I was wondering was, did they tell you how long you were going to be in there?
No,
It was just, you're in the room.
That's like part of the startup is you're just in it, because that's what I was. I was just put in it. I don't know what was going on.
Was there a certain point where you like realized like they're not going to let me out of this room? Like,
oh yeah, I figured they were gonna drive away and kill me one day. I was like, what's really the point of this? Like,
yeah, seriously, that's what I was wondering too. I was like, what's the point? They're like pretty much torturing you.
they don't. It's like they're never trying to find an end to it. They're never asking questions. They just keep going. Like, it's endless.
Yeah.
I was like,
But so the day that you probably went in, you probably thought you were going to be in there for what, like a week?
yeah, because I think I'm pretty sure I mentioned it towards the end, right before I go into the bathroom part, that I had been locked in my room before. I don't think I listed how long, but it was about a week. But I still had stuff in my room. I still had toys and stuff in my room. I was a kid. But so yeah, I was in there for like a week. So I figured, hey, 2 weeks, maybe 3. when my high school years came around and I was supposed to be in ninth grade, and I was like, I'm not in ninth grade. It's been weeks. I'm going to be missing classes and stuff.
That's pretty crazy.
And then I realized, hey, I'm probably not going to make it to ninth grade. And then next year came by, nothing happened. So I was like, well, I'm
That's the
kind
other
of
thing I
stuck.
was wondering is like, so they didn't let you go to school either.
Nah. So I was as soon as 8th grade finished, that was it. I didn't get to go to my 8th grade graduation party. At the school, I didn't get anything.
It's crazy. So I guess they declared you as a homeschool student in order to like bypass that.
No idea.
Because I'm thinking like, if you pull a kid out of the school system suddenly, at some point the administration is going to look for what's going on. I feel like they've had to have said that they were going to homeschool you.
It's between middle school and high school, so I don't know. I don't know if they would count that.
Maybe. Well, the thing is, once you have a kid, like when they're documented, like you're on the grid, like you're documented as having like a doctor, a dentist, and like a school, and you have to be enrolled. And sometimes it takes a while, because I have like an aunt or uncle or something that had a kid that they just pulled out of school randomly, and they didn't realize the legal ramifications of it. And after like a year or two, they got in trouble. It wasn't anything too extreme, but they found out that their kid wasn't in school. So I wonder if for your parents to not have that happen if they declared you as a homeschool student, which isn't that hard. All you have to do is walk up there. Like my parents walked in and just signed a piece of paper, and I was homeschooled.
I had been homeschooled before when I was in 4th grade. That was completely possible, as well as they moved every year, and they had just moved to that school, my 8th grade school, towards like the last 2 months of it. So anything is possible.
It's nuts. The other thing I was wondering was your sisters. Like, did they go through similar stuff at any point?
No, they were. I mean, they were completely locked down at the house, like they were homeschooled. But they were treated like princesses.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that actually made me mad a lot of the time. It was like,
I bet.
there's not much different between us. Like, we're all human here.
Lord.
Feed them the scrape, or feed them all the food, and I don't even get the scrape, so it is. Yeah.
The food thing was probably the craziest.
Yeah.
One of the crazier parts. Or blocking off the ventilation.
Oh yeah. I didn't realize they had blocked it off until temperatures started going extreme. So it was so hard to sleep. So like nowadays, I sleep like a charm. Nothing stops me from sleeping.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So, and then leading up to that, before that, so like you still had like extreme punishments leading up to that.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like you were treated just like your sisters and then suddenly you were put in a room.
It was kind of, I'd say everything was normal up until around my second sister was born. And then things started falling off. I guess they just started paying more attention to them. And then the punishments started getting more extreme. And it started out like a normal, like you get the bell or you'd be standing in the corner, like actually standing in the corner for a little while. And then that started progressing to hours upon hours of that. And they're like, hey.
That's already extreme.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, that's, like, I don't even know that's extreme. How long kids normally stand in the corner. Like, I have no idea.
Like 5 minutes.
Really?
Like 5 minutes, yeah. I was told, I stood in the corner as a kid, and I don't think I was ever put there longer than 20. And 20 must have meant I really messed up.
Dang.
I did 15 on the wall with my arms out like that, and if my arms started falling, my dad would get mad at me and raise them back up.
I'd say even that's extreme.
Yeah.
I had tomato cans one time. I had to do that.
What?
See, I didn't have none of that.
That's just cruel. Yeah, it's unnecessary. They just wanted me to be bored for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the shortest amount of time I was on the corner was like an hour. I don't know, like 5 minutes? Really?
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Dang.
Just to like let me know that they were upset, basically. Yeah, that's crazy. So it went from like standing in the corner to then like get on your knees, head up against the wall.
It definitely got more extreme. We're like, hey, apparently you're not learning your lesson. You're still talking in class or whatever you're doing. And so they started getting more extreme. And it was the same hours I was normal standing in the corner, but now they had it, to where I'm aching and I'm just crying on the floor.
God.
And I had to do it quietly, otherwise I get in more trouble.
Dang. Dang. Are they still in prison?
Yeah, as far as I know, they had, because it had been, I think it's been 5 years, so they automatically got a parole hearing to determine if they get out early on probation. And that's sparked another news coverage.
I saw that.
And that was like my actual first time being shown on the news. That was actually a really bad day because I didn't expect to be on the news that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I had woken up with really bad hair and I was running late. So I had threw water in my hair and my hair was greasy. I was like,
it wasn't even noticeable.
Oh, really?
It was just like, here's some dude. Yeah.
I thought it was super noticeable. I was like, crap, my hair looks like crap on the news.
No, you're fine. Yeah, that whole thing is just bananas. The parole hearing, or what do you call it?
Probation.
Yeah, the getting on parole probation thing is nuts. But I guess that didn't go through.
As far as I'm aware, no. It sucks more because they were already given, they were sentenced 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, they were sentenced 15 years probation. So getting out early and having, I don't even know if they would count more probation or if they would like add on to that or.
Probably not. It'd probably still be 15 probation.
Yeah. But, and a lot of the reason behind it was to protect my sisters. Because they are underage and they didn't want my parents trying to claim them back when they got out of prison.
So your sisters were like, this is messed up.
My sisters didn't understand. It took them, I believe, from what I understand, it took them a year or so to understand that what my parents did was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Because they were raised in it, right?
Yeah.
And they were homeschooled, so they were completely blocked off from.
And they didn't remember me when I got out. My older sister vaguely remembers. My younger sister didn't recall me at all. And so, kind of have that, and you're trying to get along with them again. And one person has all these memories, happy memories at the beginning, where you got along, you had your normal sibling fights, and you had all these other memories of, them not really caring, because they didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
And they have memories of like nothing. It's really hard to get along.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So you're still in contact, but it's hard to maintain a good relationship.
Yeah.
Because you guys were split apart.
Yeah.
In the same house.
Mm-hmm. It's like, say you go out on the Kennesaw campus and you see some freshman from high school who's doing dual enrollment, and you try to be best friends with them, and they're like a young girl, so they're like, it's really hard to make that work out.
How old's your older sister?
She was born in 2000, so she's 18 now. Wow.
Dang, so she's 18, and your younger sister?
She'd be 17 then.
Dang. So they're staying with different families?
Yeah, they got adopted.
Dang, I wonder what that's been like adjusting, like, for them too, because to just realize, oh, your parents are screwed up.
I tried to talk to them about it. My younger sister really just didn't understand it either, so it was not much talking to her. But my older sister, she just refused to talk at all. Like she wouldn't talk to me.
Just wouldn't talk to you?
Yeah, about anything like that. She would not talk about it.
Dang, you think it's just like an emotional barrier?
Yeah, probably.
And not that she's like upset or anything. It's just like, this is so messed up. I don't even want to confront it.
Yeah.
Which is sad. Wow. Dang. And I guess were they still? I guess it's hard to know, but I wonder if they were still like given a proper education.
I believe so. I mean, I listened through the crack of the door.
Mm-hmm.
It was a normal education. And now they're in actual school, high school. And they're doing pretty good.
Dang.
Yeah. One thing I had about my story is I wasn't really sure how to end it. I wasn't sure if the ending was fulfilling or not.
I'm trying to remember.
It was basically like a countdown of everything kind of ended, and this is what I've learned after it all.
I think that's a good way to do it. And then maybe just an update of how you're doing now. Yeah, in general, is a good way to put it down. The positive outlook is a good way to end it, because that's pretty crazy. Most people would come out of that feeling
burn a hole right now. I don't know if there's much positive outlook this far in.
The fact that you're like working and going to school is a pretty positive outlook, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, just thinking of how like it could have gone down is impressive. It's still horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh, thank God, because they could have killed you.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting to die.
That's nuts.
Like whether it was from starvation or to get shot, I wasn't really sure how it was gonna happen.
Did they ever like threaten? Did your stepdad ever like threaten with a gun?
No, but I knew he had one because I had found it when we were moving one time.
Mm-hmm.
There was this huge like refrigerator box and there's a blanket in it, and I thought it would be the coolest thing in the world to hide inside the box because it's tall. And my elbow hit something really hard, and I was like, oh crap, what do I do with this? I'm holding a gun and I'm like 10 years old. so I know they had it, but they never actually brought it out for anything.
Dang.
Yeah.
And so, when did your stepdad come into the picture? How old were you?
That
was another thing I was thinking.
My biological dad and my mom, they left when I was still in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as I'm aware, my stepdad's always been there. They got married when I was 2.
So your stepdad was always there.
Yeah, so I literally called my stepdad dad because that's all I knew.
Gotcha.
And I didn't know he was my stepdad until I was 10.
Weird. Dang. I was also wondering how they like acted in court, if they were remorseful or if they were just still being vindictive.
I'm pretty sure they were denying everything.
Oh, wow.
They were still calling me a liar. They really were trying to fight it. I actually had heard that my stepdad was more willing to accept everything before my mom was. And,
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I've always kind of had a little bit more respect for my stepdad, even though he kind of did everything. I feel like my mom was in control of everything.
Really?
Yeah.
I was wondering that. For some reason, I just assumed wrongly that your stepdad was the one that was doing it and your mom was following along.
Yeah. And that's what anybody would think, because, there's a man and a woman, and usually, and I'm not saying women aren't powerful, I'm just saying, like,
Culturally speaking,
and over history, it's always been the man that had the power. But my mom definitely had the power, and she would basically make my stepdad, I don't know if make him would do it is the right word, but
condone it for sure.
Yeah.
Like she was the one like saying this is going to be the punishment. That's so crazy to me that 2 of them could agree.
Yeah.
On that. Like we're gonna let him stay in there.
They're definitely soulmates.
No food.
Did you tell him how your dad tried to get back in touch with you? Your biological dad?
That was in the book.
Yeah,
okay.
you did touch on that, and then you were wondering if it was probably just because of the news story, which is very likely.
And I've tried to find ways to get back to him now.
Mm-hmm.
Things passed, and I haven't really found a way. I noticed that he had a Facebook page on one of the news articles, and I've looked through all of the news articles, and I noticed that one of them had a picture of his Facebook, and so I went to look for it, and it doesn't exist anymore. He doesn't work at that same job anymore. I tried the phone number; it's not correct anymore. Like he got up and left, and I don't know where he went.
Yeah.
Have you tried asking Dick Donovan?
I've tried asking them. Yeah, they say, hey, we'll get you this, but they never really get back. And I've asked multiple times, so they probably haven't found me either.
Dang. So when your stepdad like went to drop you off at the bus, you think that was like your mom's idea too, that whole thing?
Yeah. I don't know. I highly doubt my mom asked him to feed me. That was nice of him to feed me. That was my first adult meal.
Oh yeah, the Big Mac.
Never had a Big Mac before.
That's nuts.
Yeah. And I hang out with my best friend. I've been hanging out with him since high school, and he's younger than me. So I'd say he was like a freshman when I was a junior, or a sophomore or something. I don't know. And he's eating all these huge meals, and I'm like, dude, I never got to do that when I was a kid. Like, what the heck? You eat like a like a pig.
Dang.
Yeah.
So even as a little kid, like you guys didn't
Yeah.
get like good food.
Yeah, if you were to see my sisters, you would think they were malnourished too, but they ate just fine.
It's so crazy to me that she could think that not feeding.
Yeah.
Like that's like the most brutal part, because that could have killed you. It seemed like you probably came pretty close to dying, considering your weight and height in California. And I was wondering, like, how could they possibly think you weren't going to be picked up by cops?
Yeah.
Like, what did they think you were going to do?
Well, you know, when they've threatened me my whole life and they say don't do this, I tend to not do it. Except, of course, talking in class. For some reason, I couldn't stop talking in class. So it was like the most exciting part of my day. I couldn't shut up. All these kids to hang out with. So yeah, I mean, originally I wasn't gonna say nothing. They threatened me not to, but it just kind of spilled out.
Yeah, I mean, it just looked the part. I mean,
I was scared. I had to say something. I mainly just wanted a job, and I had to say something to get that job. I didn't get the job.
Still, it's definitely a good thing you wound up saying something.
Yeah, it really is. I'm really happy I did too.
And when they get out, like, do you already have a plan as far as like how to not be around them? Do you already have like a restraining order? Or?
No, I'm not really afraid of them, to be honest. I'm sure they'll be happy enough just to get out of prison when they finally do.
I mean, I guess they're still denying it while they're in there. Do you
I
think?
have no idea. It's been so long. I mean, I firmly believe that they still care more about my sisters than me. So if anything, they'll be trying to contact my sisters. And
It's nuts. Do you think your sisters would even be accepting at this point of that?
I really have no idea. I can't talk. They don't talk about it, anything of that sort. So
I'm curious as to how like they're mentally dealing with the whole thing, and how their foster families are dealing with it. Because the families have to be like careful about approaching that too, because they know it's a big thing.
I doubt it comes up much. I mean, I was in a foster family, and I got adopted too, and it doesn't really come up all that much.
I think it's healthy to try to like still grow without that like on your back, but I think it's also healthy to, as time goes on, help navigate how it makes you feel and how to grow and etc. Like, you know, that's why therapy can be such a powerful thing. Like for you and your sisters, or anyone who's been a, or even people who are in totally normal families, I think should go to therapy. I think it's a great thing. It's just a way to talk about how you feel. It's a helpful thing. Yeah, I just hope that they're able to kind of navigate that healthily, in a healthy way at some point. Because I think it would be good for you guys to be able to reconnect at some point. But I know it's like really tough.
Yeah,
right now.
Both of them, all three of us really are all kind of busy doing our own thing.
Right.
And we're far away now. I mean, they're still in Georgia, but they're counties away.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
So
the house looks nicer than I expected in the news story. I was like, that looks like a nice home.
yeah, I actually thought it would be bigger, just based on the one room I was in. It was a huge room. I was really expecting the house to be huge.
And they just left it empty. They were cool with paying for an empty room in a house.
Yes, that's a big room to be wasting.
Yeah, seriously, just to like hold you prisoner.
Yeah.
And they had like a deadbolt on the door at that point.
It was a double locked deadbolt, so they had a key for both sides, I think, on the innermost door. The bathroom door was just a normal deadbolt. And when I went to the bathroom, they flipped that around. So they're handy with doorknobs.
That was the other thing in the story actually that confused me, was the transition from the room to the bathroom. I actually couldn't tell when it was permanent. Like, was it after the fan caught fire?
No, it was. I wrote that. I was waiting to get back into the bedroom, but instead my dad came in with a blanket, and that was when I was officially in the bathroom.
Was it when you moved houses?
No, it was still the same house. The bathroom was right next to the bedroom.
Okay, gotcha. And he came with a blanket and was like, get in the bathroom?
No, so it originally, like, I was in the bedroom, right? And he comes in, drops my food off, opens the door. I walk in, and he's gone. Locks the door again. And I'm eating, and then I sit on the toilet and I wait until he comes back in to open the door so I can go back to my bedroom. But instead, he came in with the blanket and laid it on the ground and closed the door. And
In
so,
the bathroom?
yeah, and so I knew what that meant because that was my blanket. I was gonna sleep there. I mean, I was hopeful. I sat there for a little while, but it was pretty obvious that Deer had gone to bed, and I was probably sleeping.
It's crazy. They were just like, yeah, he deserves more punishment for sitting in a room.
It was actually, I think it was because I had pissed myself. They're like, oh, he deserves to be punished because he couldn't hold his bladder.
So he stays in the bathroom. Wow.
So that way they never have that problem again.
Jeez.
It was all about them.
It's insane. And I guess it's safe to assume, yeah, you weren't let out for any reason, pretty much.
No. Closest I was let out was when the fan caught on fire. And it was just right outside the door. And then before that, because they had, I don't know if you saw that on the interview or not, but the attorneys were defending and saying he had the opportunity to go outside whenever he wanted, but I was never given an option if my door's deadbolted. And the last time I'd been outside was when I was picking up nails in the yard. And that was towards the beginning.
Yeah.
Of the
Plus, they had complete control over you mentally anyway,
Yeah.
so that would be irrelevant. I think the majority of people would understand that.
Right.
They're being nonsensical. They're grasping for straws at that point. Like, well, he had access to outdoors. Like, oh, okay, they're fine then. Yeah, that's absolutely nuts. The fact that they even thought that they had a chance in court is crazy. They had to have been delusional.
Yeah. I think they accepted the guilty plea, but it was probably just advised that they would do it.
Yeah, their lawyer was probably like, you have to go guilty on this. Because the news probably picked up on it before the court case happened, right?
I think so. I think it was almost immediate because they got footage of my parents getting arrested or pictures of my parents getting arrested.
Oh, so yeah, that caught on quick. Yeah, so there was no chance. Like after that kind of coverage, like you can't plead not guilty.
Especially nationally.
Yeah.
It was already national, and honestly, the only reason it was national is because they sent me to California. Otherwise, I highly doubt it would have gone.
I don't know. The case is one of the most extreme I've ever read. Like, I've heard of stories of like extreme abuse, but your whole thing is up there with like that movie we were talking about. It sounds more similar to that, which is pretty rare.
But you wouldn't have known how extreme it was unless you have read my story, right?
Right. Yeah, your story helps like put it in a much more like crazy detail. But even then, with the news story, it's like you can tell it's super extreme. Like I showed my girlfriend the article, and she was like, "Oh my God, my heart! That's so crazy." So she hasn't read your story, but
Right.
just from seeing the news story, she was like, "That's one of the craziest things I've ever read." So I think even still, yeah, if it had only been in Georgia, I'm pretty confident it would have made national news. Just because it's one of the craziest things I've read. Just the fact that like a parent can do that is nuts.
Yeah, it really, what people can do, like just watching the news is pretty bad.
Well, and I could see how, like, from your perspective too. To you, it was bad, but the extent of how bad it was, you couldn't have known.
Oh no, I definitely didn't know how bad. I highly doubt I wrote it. But I hadn't asked one of my neighbor kids that I was never allowed to hang out with, but we were always at the bus stop together. I was like, "Do your parents, do they hurt you? How do you get punished?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I get that all the time." I was like, "Okay," and I had thought that was true. And I'm thinking back, I was like, "There's no way that kid was being honest."
No.
Like,
well, and they're probably thinking like the belt, like that's normal-ish. A lot of people still say that's cruel.
Yeah.
But
a lot of kids don't get really disciplined all that much anymore.
A lot of parents don't believe in striking their kid in any way at all. Period.
I mean, when I was little, maybe, but as I got older, they would just tell me, tell me I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's crazy. But I can see how, from your perspective, like maybe you couldn't have told. Like, you knew it was bad being in the room, obviously, but how bad it was, I feel like from an outside perspective, is more extreme because everyone's growing up differently than you. That like, so to you that was normal. But yeah, like from my perspective, reading that, I'm like, that's crazy. Yeah.
It surprises me sometimes. I don't know how I got out of it. So back to the editing.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So you mentioned that it was hard to transition from the bathroom to the bedroom. I can work on that. My other guy, the editor, he's looking through it. He hasn't gotten back to me really yet. He said he's read it. I don't really know how to work on the sentence right now. He said that he's rewriting the sentences for me, so the sentences should flow a little bit better.
Yeah, that's the best start in my opinion. What he said, taking some of the shorter sentences and just making everything consistent, and then expanding it from there. Because there are a lot of areas where like you could expand on how it was affecting you, because that's a big thing. Like from a reader's perspective, we're fascinated in like a dark way of like how it affected you, because we're kind of putting ourselves in that situation because it's so crazy to us. It's like, what would you do in that? Like some parts of, like in some of it you do very well, like the bathroom part where you're like making the figurines. I was like, I'd probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you went into a lot of detail of like how it affected you and how you were able to pass the time, the newspaper thing, the books. But my biggest thing, I think, was when you first got put in the room, like more details on more emotion, and like the realization that you probably weren't going to get out, and how like at first you were like, oh, I've been in the room before, and the progress from my parents are just being my parents to, oh crap.
I believe I was probably rushing through the beginning because my story is more well known for the ending.
Yeah,
and that's the part I wanted to make sure I covered.
Yeah. But the beginning is super important too. But yeah, I think expanded with the sentences and the extra. I mean, that easy 100 pages, and people will want to read it.
Yeah.
Like I'd say, once you get it completely written out,
I mean,
it may take some time.
100 pages is. I mean, for some books, 100 pages you can fly through that, but for some as detailed or tragic as mine, I don't know if people can follow along though, if it's made that long.
Maybe you'd be surprised. That book, Rome, I'd say has less going on than your story does, and it manages to be, I don't know, it's long. It's 200 pages maybe.
Yeah, I think it's between 200, 300, if not more.
Yeah, it's a full-blown book, and she's just in the room. Like you have this whole thing of like a transition period of being raised, more extreme punishments, put in the room, while you're put in the room, not getting fed, and then the bathroom, and then the LA part, and then the aftermath. There's a lot of story to be told.
How long was the room story? Like in real life, how long was this band?
I think it was actually a really long time, but not a lot happened.
The story started with her, and it showed that she was in the room and was giving birth to a kid, and then it jumps to whenever the kid's like, I want to throw it at maybe 4 or 5, and he doesn't understand anything about the outside world. He thinks that room is all that there is to Earth. And the guy that comes in to feed them and occasionally rapes the mom, he thinks that he just comes in, and then when he leaves, he just disappears.
I think it's told from the perspective of the son in the book, actually.
Yeah.
So it's very like novelized, you know, but it's a true story about a woman being held captive. But like the news story for it, I think it's just like woman is kept in a room for I want to say 8 years. I might be way off, but it's like
it's about 8 years. Yeah.
It might be. It's like woman's held in a room and occasionally raped, and they turned it into this like 200-page narrative.
Well, they probably had like a professional writer help her with that one.
Probably. But I'd still argue that with yours, with the help of some people, and it's going to take some time, but it'll be worth it. It could be fleshed out into a big thing that really just like I was super interested, like reading it. I mean, it's terrible, but like
I mean, it's not that terrible. Come on, man. They didn't write. My writing's not that bad.
no, it's terrible.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
the
know.
story, yeah. But it's like I'm so interested as I'm reading as to like how it was affecting you. So like that could definitely it could be a big thing. So I'd say definitely hold off on working on getting it published until you know that it's really good. I think the other dude you have working on it is a great person to have writing. I'm gonna help you write it out too. I've only read it so far, but I'll do what I can. And then once it's written out, I would do like a big AMA on Reddit, get some exposure. You'll get it.
Is
Like-
KSU a good Reddit to do that? I don't know how many people actually are following
No,
KSU.
there's no one on it. KSU's got like how many subscribers? It's like 1,000, and then you might have around 20 people on it at a time. It's good for freshmen. The most posts I see on the KSU subreddit are
Yeah,
freshmen
it's always
coming
freshmen.
in, asking about wait lists. Like that's probably half the posts. That's why I got on it, was when I first was transferring here from Georgia State. I was just curious. I saw there was a KSU subreddit. I think there was a sign Marietta campus posted. I was like, why not? But the AMA subreddit, on the other hand, has like 10 million subscribers and it gets exposure to the
What
whole
is
thing.
AMA?
Ask me anything.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know that one's huge.
Yeah. Even before it's written there, if you post your story there, you're like, hi, this is my name, this is my story, this is what I'm doing now, ask me anything. I mean, it's going to be the front page. People will be interested. They'll want to help. It'll get you some exposure, for sure. And in the book, once the book is done, people are going to be interested. Like, just from me, like making remarks to my girlfriend or roommate, they're like, "Oh my god, what?" Like it became a big topic.
I should be able to, like the person who's editing it. Well, as soon as he like rewrites it,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back and put in like what I was emotionally like at the
Mhm.
beginning. I'll obviously go through it again with you and him. But the people that interviewed me for the news,
Mm-hmm.
the district attorney knows him well. There's a high probability that I can get more notification through him and spread out. I mean, it's a local news station, but it's WABE, like, or not, is it WABE? What is it?
It's something like that.
Yeah.
There's so
like
many
Channel
local
2.
news stations.
WSB TV.
Yeah, WSB.
You'll, I would use that too. Any avenue you can use. Reddit's gonna bring out all the people from like 20 to 40, and then anyone older than that, the news station's gonna get. Because honestly, no one under the age of 50 watches news really anymore.
Well,
Minus some people.
yeah.
But yeah, I think the AMA would be big for that. The news would be big.
What caught me off guard was when after my interview, it actually ended up on Snapchat, and I didn't know about this. Like, I don't really follow Snapchat stories.
I don't even.
And somebody texted me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, you're on Snapchat," and I was like, "Yeah, of course I am. I have a Snapchat account."
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "No, like you're actually in the news," and I was flipping through, and I was like the first person mentioned on Snapchat. I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty
Interesting. So someone already
Yeah.
put it out there. It's because it's interesting. Yeah, I think there's still a lot more. This whole thing has still got it's got a lot coming for you, which is, I mean, like honestly, you deserve it. Like you deserve some recognition and some praise for like doing all right. People are gonna be fascinated by the story. It's super screwed up. So I would collect any bank you can get from it.
Yeah, well, I would definitely reinvest it because it's not gonna last forever.
No, yeah, but I think you could really there's still more of a lasting impression for it to leave on people because a lot of people still don't know about it.
Yeah.
Like it being on national news was like a flash in the pan that has now disappeared, and your first-hand account isn't known by the general public. So bringing it out is going to generate a lot of interest and good stuff for you. So yeah,
hoping to help some people too, because I know there's people who are probably struggling with
A lot of people are going to be able to relate, sadly. Yeah, I think it's understated how many people get abused.
Right. Because, right now, I actually worked at the district attorney's office, and, what's new, like, they have a new category, and it's called domestic violence. That's really always been, as far as all the files that I've read, it's always been, husband and wife fighting. And it's always fighting. But you rarely actually see something as hidden as what I was put into. And it's because they've been hiding this for so long, or they're brought up like this.
People don't usually think that domestic violence can happen between, like, the parent and a child. They think it's the spouse.
True.
It's always about love or something. Actually, it's usually always about drugs, but...
Well, and even though a lot of people could sadly relate, your case is still going to be the 0.5%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's super extreme. That's why it's so interesting.
And it's the internet, and anybody can relate on the internet.
Right, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, the fact that you were nearly killed makes it pretty unique.
Well,
Yeah.
any other editing things you saw?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I think the changing up the sentence structure, like the other guy said. What's his name?
It's Dick Donovan.
Dick. Okay, so yeah, his suggestion's really good. That's the best start. That's going to be like the foundation, and then we can work on expanding it. And as we expand it, we'll have to go like each section at a time because there's a lot of story to go through.
It is pretty long. That's one thing I didn't want to drag it too long, like 100 pages. I was actually surprised it got to 25 pages. I was telling her, I was like, wow, I wasn't even done yet. I got 22 pages. Like, holy crap, that's the longest I've ever written.
It might feel dragged out to you, but from our perspective,
Yeah.
it's so crazy that we're hooked. Like, I read every now and then, and I mean, reading through your thing got me more hooked than most, published books do.
Yeah, he was telling me, he was like, look, I've got 22 pages, and I felt kind of bad about my reaction. I was like, you only got 22 pages?
Yeah, I mean, spaced out like in a book, it'd probably be more than that.
Yeah.
Than it would be on that document.
Right.
I don't know, maybe like 42 or something, because it's like single space, right?
And it's not paragraphed correctly, I'm sure.
Yeah, with the formatting and everything especially. Yeah, you're looking at a decent size. And then with the embellishments that we can add in, it'd be publishable for sure, which I want to see happen. That's part of why I was like, I want to help, because I'm like, how is this not like,
I mean, the other thing is that I didn't want to make it long is I knew either I was going to have to edit it myself or I'd get some help, but to really get something really done, it would have to cost money, and I'm not about to be throwing my money back into it.
Well, the thing is,
Risk.
you're in a unique position because generally, yes, you have to put in a lot of money for something. If I want to write a book right now, it's going to cost me. But you are an investment because we know that it's going to do well.
Yeah.
So, and I know I'm not alone in that. So
I
if
mean,
you go to a publisher,
if anybody would have believed me, like, without having read my story, I'd be like, hey, I believe this will go well. Like, I believe it will go well too. But all these professionals would be like, it's not going to go well. And they're not going to, because they don't know me. So they're not.
but if they know the story and they read that, I guarantee you at least one of them is going to front it for you.
Yeah.
They'll say, okay, we're going to want to cut maybe or something, but they're going to make money off of it, so they're going to want to do it.
Right.
Like, I would bet money right now that it would be relatively easy to do. Especially if you do the AMA on Reddit. I know it's kind of silly to talk of Reddit so much, but it can be pretty powerful.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people on it.
A lot of things start from Reddit too.
Yeah, the AMA could get you going alone. There's probably a publisher, like I see things like that happen sometimes, who could get the ball rolling for you.
Yeah,
there are a lot of educated people.
If I were to put money in it, I felt like I need to find a way to save the money, having an editor. But if I was going to publish it, that would be the thing I'd put money into, because the publisher can get it everywhere.
They distribute it, yeah. Well, and luckily too, you have Amazon as a start. The Martian started off as a forum post, which is now like a big movie. And the dude, the way that he started it, he couldn't get a publisher. He's just some random boob on the internet, like writing about Mars. And then he had enough people getting interested in it that when he put it on Amazon for like, I think $1 was the cheapest they allowed it. He wanted it to be free. He just had people saying, I want to read this on my Kindle, which they would say the same thing to you. So he was like, okay, I'll put it on Amazon. Amazon's like, you have to charge. It can't be free. He's like, all right, the lowest one, $1. I don't care.
That's weird.
And overnight, literally overnight, it sold over like 10 million copies or something. It was like nuts. Maybe it was 1 million. I might be exaggerating, but it was a lot. And after 1 month, he got a call from Universal saying they want to make a movie. So, and that's just because of the internet. Like, internet made that happen. I think internet could make yours happen too. Because after the Amazon storm took off, everyone's like, okay, if we charge $5, we're making bank. Let's call this clown up and get this going. They're going to say the same thing to you. So, I'd say it's almost a guarantee. We just have to get the ball rolling. Be glad to help. I think the Reddit thing would be a good thing for you.
Oh, I haven't been very good on Reddit. Every time I get on Reddit and I try to post something, on things that I follow, I get shut down because people are really rude on Reddit.
That's how it works. Yeah.
And so I wouldn't even know when to start. Like,
I can help you with that too if you want. One day we can sit down and start the post. You're gonna need like a full day to respond to people. Just so you know.
I'm used to that. For about a year, I actually had a gaming guild. It was across multiple games. I had 500 people that I was taking care of, and I was the leader of. And I had multiple social articles. You know what Discord is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had Discord. I had to make sure all the bots worked. I had everybody working out. I had my own Reddit. I coded the page. It was actually pretty awesome. So yeah, I'm really well at replying back to people.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because you're gonna get a lot of responses. I bet. Yeah, maybe that's a good place to start too. While it's being worked on, put your story on there, get it out there, get some responses. Yeah, the KSU subreddit, there's like nobody.
It's dead. I was actually surprised I got any replies like yourself.
Yeah, I just like click it randomly because I'm bored at work. I can just go through the list of subreddits.
I think that was the most likes I got in about a year. I got like 5 likes.
Oh, you'll get a lot. Thousands. Yeah, I also wouldn't worry too much about the strangers. You're still going to wind up getting downvotes on your, big posts too, but it's just the internet. Reddit's not about Reddit's all about popular opinion. So you could be totally in the right and still get downvoted.
Yeah. Well, with the local, not the local, it was actually California, but with that story going on, I'm sure people will be interested to hear another story again. I mean, it was a refreshed story, but they don't know my story. I'm sure it will be.
Even in a vacuum, yeah. When you posted on there, and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" and I clicked on it, I was like, "What?" And I just went down the rabbit hole, read the whole thing, and so, I mean, other people are going to have a similar response.
Right. I don't know how much better
I think your phone burst.
The 20% came up 5 minutes ago.
What time is it?
It's at 53:53.
No.
The time is 8:56.
9, I think.
All right. Well, I think you can stop.
Okay.